This video is brought to you by FishHuntShoot.com. For more and bigger trout, go to FishHuntShoot.com. Howdy guys, Cal here. It is time for this week's fishing report, and I'll tell you right up front, it's a bad news, good news, better news proposition. Wes and I, we've been doing, kind of the same stuff. We've been going out to Englebright Reservoir, Rollins Lake. We've been hitting those for some trout, some bass, the occasional kokanee. I've been showing footage of that for the last 2 weeks, so I'm not going to show any of that footage now. Let's get into the bad news first, okay? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about tackle, and then we'll get into the good news and the better news. Bad news. Bad news is that all national forests all the way across California, everywhere, they are all closed until at least September 17th. And there's a lot of rumors online that say some forests are closed until November 30th and others are closed until September 30th. By all means, check ahead. But what I've heard is that national forests across the board are closed at least until the 17th in order to mitigate the risk of more fire. And if you've been watching the news, there are huge fires burning all over California. The big two that are getting most of the headlines are the Caldor, which made a strong run at South Lake Tahoe this week, but looks like the firefighters have done a great job over there. At least in terms of South Lake Tahoe. Lost about 600 buildings in that fire so far. It's over 200,000 acres. And then the Big Dixie fire that is up north, actually it's all over the North State at this point. It's approaching 1 million acres. It's burned around Elminor. It's burned through Lassen Park. It's burned over towards 395. Highway 395. It's burned towards Quincy several times. It's burned down towards Lake Davis, where it's burning right now. So that fire is massive and it's all over. So those are the two, big fires in the state, but there's a bunch of smaller ones. And the bottom line is the firefighters, the aircraft, all that stuff is stretched so thinly that they just don't want another fire busting out over there or over here. Therefore, under these dry, warm conditions, they've opted to close the national forest until the 17th, and they may well extend that. What has that done to trout fishing? It really has effectively closed 80, maybe 85, maybe 90%, I don't know, of the viable trout waters. All the places I like to fish, French Meadows, Jackson Meadows, Davis, all those places are essentially closed right now. They're off limits. If you decide to buck the rules and get out there, you are subject to some super hefty fines and up to 6 months in jail. So, please follow the rules. Don't do that. These forests are going to reopen, and the lakes are going to reopen, and that's going to be part of our good news, and we'll get to that in a second. I want to take a minute right now to talk about trolling flies, and more specifically, I want to talk about tube flies. So what is a tube fly? Let's do a little compare and contrast. We rely heavily on both of these style flies here on the channel, me and Wes and a lot of our fans at this point. We have really pushed fly trolling, and you guys out there that have given it a serious try know just how deadly they are. So this is a standard trolling fly right here. It's a pretty standard deal. It's a marabou fly, and it is tied on a standard, wire hook, just like that. Now, there's not a ton you can do with this fly in terms of modifying the rigging, stuff like that. You put the action disc on it, troll it through the water on some fluorocarbon leader material, vary your speed, and you're going to catch fish on that. Now, you might get into a situation where they're short striking or grabbing this tail. That will drive you crazy. But with a traditional fly like that, not a ton you can do about short strikes. You can add a treble and stuff like that, but that's a little complicated. That's definitely more advanced kind of stuff. And that brings us to the tube fly. Let me set this guy down. Tube flies look like this, and they are extremely versatile in terms of rigging. And what does a tube fly, what does that term really mean? Well, let me show you the nose of this fly. The fly is actually tied on a small plastic tube. See that? That's hollow inside. The leader line, I'll show you here, is sliding. See the hook and the beads there? the hook freely slides through the fly, okay? These flies were actually invented in World War II in England when guys couldn't get the long shank streamer hooks, so they started tying flies on little metal tubes and adding a hook behind the tube fly, there you go. Now, this fly right here is about 3.5 inches long. The nice thing about tube flies is if that's too big for your local lake, you could take a scissors and you can trim that skirt to say 2 inches or 1.75 inches, whatever you like. Here's how a tube fly is rigged. Here's how these are rigged. I have some 10-pound test fluorocarbon leader material. I've threaded on the action disc. I've threaded on the fly. Let me pull the fly up and out of our way. On the leader, I have some beads and I have a bobber stop, and then I have, in this case, a number 4 red treble hook. By sliding that bobber stop up and down, I can move the hook back and forth in the fly. I could have that hook, kind of way up here, or I could have it, if I wanted to tip that hook, if I was really wanting to go big, I wanted to tip that hook with maybe some anchovy skin or something, I could place that hook 1/2 inch behind the fly. So very versatile in terms of where you put the hook and also the size of the hook. If I'm going for big fish, I'm going to run that number 4 treble. If I'm going for fish that might be a little bit smaller, maybe I'll go with a number 6 treble. And again, you can vary the distance that hook is behind the fly. You can trim the skirt of the fly. And just a super versatile presentation. Over the past 3 years or so, we have put these tube flies to hard use, and they are fish catchers. In the fall, if I was out at a place like Lake Elsinore or even Comanche, Collins Lake, when it's being planned, at places where there's big trout, I would run that full size. But if I was up in the Sierras, maybe at French Meadows or somewhere like that, I might cut that back to about 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches, something like that. So I am very pleased that we are now offering tube flies in the store. We are offering up a set of 10 tube flies in 5 different colors with all the goodies and accessories you need to rig them up. If you're interested in getting some tube flies at a very competitive price, get on over there. We kit them out just like we do everything else in the compartment box. Check it out. My tube fly kits, 10 flies, all the gear, and a snazzy compartment box. $30. We'll send it to your house. Enough said. If you're interested, fishhuntshoot.com. My dog is barking over here. Let me go deal with that. I'll be right back, and we'll get into the good news and the better news in terms of fishing around California, around the North State and the Central State. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Lucy is now in timeout. She sees my neighbor every day, but every morning when she sees my neighbor, she has to go over there, strut her stuff, and do a little bit of barking, I guess just to show that she's, on the job. But I hate barking dogs, so Lucy's in timeout. The good news. The good news about these national forest closures come in the form of when these lakes reopen, we're going to be moving into the fall pattern, and these lakes are not going to have been fished for several weeks at that point. And places like, Lake Elsinore, there's been really no fishing pressure out there for 50 days, maybe 45 days, something like that, almost the entire duration of the Dixie Fire. So the bottom line is we're going to be fishing for trout that are starting to get into a fall routine. We're also going to be fishing for trout that have had almost no fishing pressure, in most cases zero fishing pressure for weeks. Whenever you have fish that haven't been fished for a while, and fish that are starting to get more aggressive as they put on, the fall feed bag, we're going to kick some butt out there, guys. We have some great fishing ahead of us. And let's face it, man, it's not real comfortable to go out right now. It's hot and smoky and kind of scary all over the place. So anyway, great fishing is ahead during the fall season, and hopefully that fishing is going to hold up right into the winter. It always does. As I always say, you got to start off high in the Sierras, and then kind of follow the action downslope as it gets colder and colder and snow starts to be a factor. And that segues us into the great news. Now, the folks at NOAA, they do a lot of modeling and a lot of prediction on what the winter is going to look like. It's a very complicated process that I certainly don't fully understand. The bottom line is they go out into the Pacific in very deep water and they sample water temperatures, and based on those temperatures they can predict either a El Nino situation. That's where we have those Pineapple Express storms here in Northern California. The jet stream drops down over the state. We get that big highway of storms that go through. We have, flooding, record rain. All the lakes are full by February, and we have more water than we know what to do with. Or it could be a La Nina year, which can indicate dry, warm conditions. Classic La Nina, worst La Nina we've seen was last winter. Very dry, very warm. Here in the Sierra foothills, I only burned about 50% of the amount of firewood I would ordinarily burn. It was that warm here, throughout the entire winter. So 3 months ago, the sampling was suggesting that we were going to have another very warm, dry winter here in Northern California. It was a pretty bleak outlook, even though the NOAA website says this is not an exact science. They're often right, but sometimes they're wrong. So they throw that disclaimer out there, but over time, their predictions, pretty accurate, okay? But, once they take samples and they make a prediction, well, they'll go out and take samples again several months later, and they may modify their prediction based on what they see. And that's what exactly happened about two and a half weeks ago. They went out, they resampled the conditions in the Pacific. They ran the data, and what they're looking at now, and you can see the map here, they're predicting that it's going to be dry and warm in Southern California and throughout the Southwest, but it's going to be wetter than normal starting at about the San Francisco Bay Area north into the Pacific Northwest. And that is fantastic news. And if you look close at that map, it looks like it's going to be dang cold up in, Montana, the Dakotas. It's from my buddy Ken and Rob Annis. They're brothers. They were in my class years ago. They're up there. They live in the Dakotas. So you guys are in for some real cold if this map is correct. I know they watch my videos. But speaking for us here on the West Coast in the northern half of California, it looks like, if the prediction holds, that we are in for some stormy, wet weather this year. And they said particularly between November and the end of January. And man, that is absolutely phenomenal news on many fronts. It's gonna, if we get that big rain, it's gonna clear out our rivers. It's gonna fill up our lakes. It's just gonna make for more moisture in the woods. Hopefully that moisture is gonna hang around well into next summer. It'll tamp down fire danger a little bit. It is just wonderful news. It's a wonderful prediction if it comes true for the folks that live and fish and, enjoy the outdoors in Northern California. Part of the thing, that's so cool about Northern California is the 4 distinct seasons, and we haven't had a lot of that, in the last year. We're supposed to have that cold, snowy winter, the awesome spring, the chilly, crisp fall, and the warm, awesome summer without, wildfires scaring the bejesus out of everybody. So anyway, there you got it. Bad news, forests are closed. Good news, when they reopen, the fishing's going to be pretty hot and heavy, I believe. And the great news is that it looks like we are going to get some of that much prayed for rain and snow this winter. Keep your fingers crossed. I won't really believe it until it's here. But I trust the science, I trust those guys at NOAA, and I hope they are spot on about that rain, that snow, stuff like that. If you're looking for those tube flies, once again, fishhuntshoot.com. That's our fishing report for this week. Not a lot of fish, a lot of talking. I will catch you next time right here on YouTube. I'll keep you posted about what's upcoming with our guide service and stuff like that. You have a great day, have a great weekend, and I will see you right here very soon. I'm Kel Kellogg. Thanks for all the support, guys.